Okay guys, number 2, Group 2, Group B. I'm joined by always with Ben. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you, Jack. How are you?
I'm decent. I'm pretty excited to talk about this Group B. There's a few interesting clashes, and then there is a whipping boy of the group, as inevitably at World Cups you do tend to have one team who maybe go into it with all hope lost, and I think most Australians are probably going to be watching the World Cup through teary eyes come the end of it. Ben, where do you want to kick things off here? I'm going to give you free roam. Pick a team, any team.
Well, mate, I think you can tell from the accent where I want to start. I think we should start with the whipping boys, with Australia.
That was an impressive accent.
Is that actually quite good?
No. Anyway, have you got any thoughts on Australia? We were looking at the squads beforehand. They have two players playing for League One teams in England. I know they haven't fully announced their squad yet.
Yeah.
I'm a bit worried.
Well, Spain don't have any in League One. So, immediately, there's a comparison there. There's a difference. No, if I was Australia, I'd be pretty nervous about the whole thing. They're never really tested internationally, which I think's a big issue for them. They tend to play against teams like Oman, who I do believe, or Iran finished above them in the group stages. That may be incorrect, but what I'm saying is Australia didn't even top their group in their qualification sort of to the World Cup. Yeah, which is a bit of a concern.
Well, it's worth noting, if you're not well versed with the kind of Australia situation, they asked to be put into the Asian qualifying for the World Cup because they didn't have enough challenge through the Oceania qualification, which is how teams like New Zealand have qualified before. But no, as you mentioned, they didn't have a particularly easy campaign to get to the World Cup, and their team isn't the strongest it's ever been. Part of that with the group they've been put in, I'm worried. Yeah,
there's no Harry Kewell, there's no Mark Viduka. I'd be terrified, frankly. The captain is Jedinak, he plays for Palace, and he's one of a few familiar names. There's not too many to speak of in the Australian team. Obviously, Tim Cahill is the talisman, but even at 34, I'm not entirely convinced that Australia are going to be able to pull it off this year. If they get a point in the group, Jack, I'll do whatever you want.
Anything.
I'll do whatever you want.
If you got a forfeit, leave it down. Leave it on Twitter.
An accent for an entire episode, mate. Yes, is that a good idea, mate?
That's a terrible idea.
Put another shrimp on the barbie, mate, because we're not going through the group stage. That's.
I'm impressed. Shall we move on? Because there are kind of teams here that we really do need to cast an eye on, as we see both Holland and Spain drawn in the same group. Obviously, I don't know how the seedings work in this competition. In fact, I'm not even sure where these two teams lie in the world rankings, but they're in the same group. Thoughts? I think cover these at the same time. They're comparable in some ways and very different in others.
They are the finalists of the 2010 South African World Cup. So Spain, we'll start with Spain, the holders. Could it be Xavi's last tournament? Oh, could well be.
I think it could be a few of these players' last tournaments.
Well, do you know what? You could be right. And obviously, can they keep this winning formula? We've spoken about Brazil in the previous show. Feel free to get back and listen. See what I've done there, Jack. Getting it all. Yep. Can they keep the run going? Can they? Their legacy is already pretty bloody good. Can they win a World Cup in Brazil, in the heart of international football? In my opinion, the heart of international football in Brazil. Diego Costa, bit of controversy around him. Will he be leading the line? Obviously, we saw that he got taken off in the Champions League final, so I'm not entirely sure what his fitness is going to be like. But he has been called up to the 23.
They might be able to whack out that horse placenta and kind of rub it on him again. I don't know if you heard about that.
Sure. Yeah, I did hear about it. I'm surprised you brought it up.
I just thought a bit of trivia.
Especially with your history with horses.
So bloody hell. I thought we weren't going to talk about that. Sure.
Well, that's a story for another time. Maybe that could be part of the quiz. So Spain, I don't want to say I'm tipping them to win it, but I think you'd be a fool not to, because of their previous international tournament experience, the players they've got. I fancy Spain to have a very good tournament. On the other hand, well, actually, quickly, how do you rate their chances?
I assume they're their favourites. They have still a strong team on paper, and I think one thing that Spain have done really well is that they are transitioning as a team. Very often an international team will have their golden generation, and they play them and they play them and they play them. And you look at the Spain squad that's been announced, there's certainly players for the future being kind of included in the side Obviously, you've got players like Casillas, aged 33 now. Will this be his last World Cup as captain? Probably. He could still play at 37 as a keeper. That's not unheard of. Then you've got players like Xabi Alonso, obviously 32 now. David Villa, 32. But then on the flip side, Spain are doing a really good job of getting some good younger players into the team and playing them. And obviously, Spain are never going to struggle with depth. And
no.
I think that fresh blood might serve them well this tournament. And I think if they win this year, that experience that's going to give some of those younger players is going to be vital in terms of how we see them progress as a squad.
I would agree. I would definitely agree with that. Oh, Jesus Christ, there's been an earthquake. Looking across at Holland, a slightly different story. Their manager, already on the way out. United have snapped up Louis van Gaal. So what do we think? When I look at the Dutch team, I've not got the same confidence that I usually have with the Dutch team. I don't know about you.
They're a team who, in past tournaments, you'd look at them and you go, it's the Dutch. You know what to expect from them. They're going to be solid all round. A few decent wingers. They're going to have a clinical striker of some form. And I guess they still have got that to an extent with Van Persie. He's not been 100% in form. And they've still got players like Robben, who you'd say is kind of their in-form player on the side. But you look further and further back at their team as you go back. I mean, Krul in goal isn't a bad keeper. They've also got Michel Vorm as well. But their defence is less than to be desired right now, if you ask me. I think that's going to be their big weakness, and I think that could cost them.
Yeah, not many caps amongst the defence for the Dutch. Not the same experience in goal either. Obviously, it's been a while since Van der Sar was around, but as you say, you used to look at the Dutch and you used to think solid all round. They've got people everywhere. They've got the Van Bronckhorsts, the Stams. All these players are gone. They're long gone. I look at the Dutch defence now and I'm thinking, bloody hell, they are in a spot of bother. The midfield, different story. You've got De Jong, Schneider, and up front, as you say, you've got players like Robben, Huntelaar, Kout, Van Persie, who guided this same Dutch team, well, similar Dutch team, to a World Cup final, obviously beaten by Spain last time out. But yeah, Van Persie was the top scorer in the European qualifying. So I'm sure that'll give Dutch fans a little bit of hope. Aside from that, like Leroy Fer's been called up. That's what I'm saying there. And Norwich went down this year in the Premier League. So I'm not sure they've got the strength in depth. They've got a few young players that I do rate. Like Steven is it Vig? I'm not entirely sure how to say his name. Plays for Feyenoord. Highly rated young prospect. I feel like he could potentially have a breakout year if he starts. But
I was just going to come on to that a little bit. Is the fact that the Dutch team has, I believe, 4 Feyenoord players in the back line. And Feyenoord finished, I believe, second in the Dutch Prem this year. So on that front, they've not necessarily got the worst unit, and I'd expect to see a few of those players play, and it'll be interesting to see if that chemistry is there, because that can be vital at international level, particularly in new defence, that a team can work as a unit. So that might work in their favour. I just think there is a big difference between playing in a World Cup in Brazil against the likes of Diego Costa, and other really prolific strikers, not Fernando Torres, and playing in the Dutch Premier League against some of the players that you will find, up top in that league. It's just a difference in class. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think the Dutch, I can't take my eyes off the fact they've got Van Persie, Robben, Schneider, De Jong, Huntelaar. I do think they are particularly strong going forward, amongst some of the best forwards in world football. In the kind of attacking third, but at the back, like Tim Krul, Vorm, and the Ajax #1, whose name is difficult to read, frankly. But I assume Krul will probably start. I don't know. To be honest, I'm not sure who starts with them. Vorm at 30 years old, does he get the nod? He's got the most caps, so I guess we'll see. I should probably have researched. I'm so sorry, everyone. But aside from that, shall we move on?
I'm just going to bring up one more thing, and this is more of a question for you. If you're Louis van Gaal going into this tournament, and defensively, it's not necessarily weak, but it's not your strongest area of the pitch, and it could be exposed. Do you go for the win and put a real emphasis on your attacking players, or do you go, we're going to sit our midfielder a little bit deeper, ensure that we defend better as a unit to cover up that weakness, and then hit teams on the break? Because you've got Huntelaar who can hold up the ball well.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'll play though. I'm pretty sure I'll play Kout, Robben, and Van Persie as a 3. That seems to be what he tends to do, Van Gaal. If I was Van Gaal, I'm sticking De Jong in front of them, the back 4 this is, and saying you're in charge of all of this. Don't let this go wrong. De Jong's been at multiple tournaments, highly experienced player. I think he's the key to making sure the Dutch look more solid than they maybe are. Do I sit back in? Well, I think, as you say, front foot forward, let your attacking players do the business and hope your defence can have a breakout World Cup. And the players we're looking at now, who we don't think much of, in 2 World Cup times, will each have 50 caps and we'll be saying how strong they look at the back. If I'm Van Gaal, I think I'd put more emphasis on the attack and hope my defence just do a job, if you know what I'm saying. But I think there are a lot of teams in the World Cup like that.
Yeah, we'll come on to that obviously later, but that's been a talking point for us, has been in world football. Particularly, it's evident in the Premier League with Liverpool. There is a lot of teams who are very good attacking players, and maybe even they play more attacking wing-backs because it better suits their more attacking system, and they're willing to give up some defensive frailties and just outscore other teams. And it'll be interesting to see if the teams without this balance, Argentina's, Japan's, Holland's, England. I mean, England even, you could say that with England's centre-back partnership, and we don't want to touch on that too much, but it's a conundrum, and I think different teams are going to approach it different ways, and it could result in some pretty darn high-scoring games and hopefully some entertaining football as a result.
Indeed. So while it's hotting up in Holland, it's chilly in Chile.
These puns are amazing, man.
Thank you. So Chile, I think they are the wild card of this group. They certainly are. I think we've talked about the frailties the Dutch have got, whereas Chile, they came to Wembley not that long ago and gave England a seeing to, beating them 2-0. It was a friendly, fair enough, but you still got to do it. Big stage, Wembley. Alexis Sanchez, their main man. Medel, obviously highly rated. Gary Medel, they've got all the Dels. McIntosh, all that. Vargas, another one up top, who's a familiar face to many. I fancy them. I fancy them.
I think Holland might finish ahead of them in this group.
Well,
but I don't know. As you said, they caused England a shock. I think it was interesting going into that game, and I think there's a few South American teams for whom Brazil is going to suit them amazingly as players, and obviously they're well acclimatised to it. But I think there's not too much pressure on them. Teams like Chile, given their group, you see Holland, the Netherlands being drawn with you. You see Spain being drawn with you. You see Australia. You might put that down as a win off the bat. I think, to go through in a World Cup group, you need 5 points. And Chile are the kind of team that could probably do that. I think they could get 6. I think they could beat Holland. I think the Holland-Chile game is going to be the big one. But as you mentioned, they have a fairly strong team everywhere. They have kind of these main players in all the roles. Maybe in goal we don't know so much about their keeping. They've got Claudio Bravo, who plays for Sociedad, I believe.
Yeah.
But then they've got Gary Medel, had a really good season at Cardiff, a player who came to England with a bad reputation for his ability to maintain his discipline, and he's controlled that well this year. I think he's going to be instrumental. Obviously plays in midfield for Cardiff, I believe, most of the time.
Yeah, I was actually disappointed with Medel. I wanted him to come to England and just, and excuse my language here, folks, fuck shit up. I wanted him to come and absolutely ruin people, and he didn't. He was quite reserved the whole time.
And then you've got Vidal, who I think is, again, just a really good midfielder.
Yeah.
And then, as you mentioned, Sanchez and Vargas. Vargas has had a very good season. That can't be forgotten. He's fairly young, playing at Valencia. Had a pretty good season in La Liga. I think, as you mentioned, they're the wild card. They have a few key players there who I go, yes, I've seen you. You're good. You're good. You're good. And even Botajor, if we really want to throw the boat out. But then there's a lot of players there who it's like, I don't know that much about you. They've got, players like Esteban Paredes, who's been called up age 33, plays for the Chilean champions Colo-Colo. And he's been quite hotly tipped.
This is quite like about the World Cup. And Chile have always been a bit like this. They're a team that, they've got a lot. Okay, we shouldn't overestimate. They've got a lot of players we have heard of, but they've also got a lot of players we haven't seen so much of, which I find endearing about a World Cup. This is why I like watching World Cups for. I like to be surprised. I hate the fact we're fed football in such a way now where we know about everyone and everything, and we know stats on everyone. I quite like the fact the Chileans aren't necessarily like that. Of course, as you mentioned, they've got their big name players, but across the board, there's players there I'm not 100% familiar with, and that's good. I like that. I want to be talking about them during this World Cup and saying we didn't even know about this guy. He scored a hat-trick against Spain, etc. So will that bring us on to some predictions?
Yeah.
I'll do it in an Australian accent, just for the sake of the show, mate.
So, who's your two teams going through and in what order?
Well, Copper, I think it'll be Spain and Chile.
Spain and Chile. Bold.
Yeah, my boys will be going out of the group stage.
See, I think I'm going to go with Spain. I think that's a given. I think if you're not choosing Spain there, you're destined to lose money if you're betting on it. But I think Holland. I think the Netherlands...
Oh, blimey, mate. What a prediction.
I just think that with Chile, whilst they have a few good players, I just don't think it's going to be enough for them.
Oh. That is a great shame it's come back. I can't help it. Well, no, I don't know. I like Chile as a team. I think they've got a bit more in terms of the unit in comparison to Holland. And I think they're a bit of a dark horse. I can see them upsetting the Dutch. Van Persie having a little bit of a cry. Robin kicking boots at people. I'm excited to see that meltdown. And let's face it, if they're not doing it, the French will. So we'll see it one way or another. I don't know. I fancy Chile and Spain, and you fancy Holland and Spain. So that's the first disagreement we've had.
Yeah, first of many, I imagine.
All right.
So if you want to see some more disagreements, podcast is daily for the fans. You can check it out on YouTube and Twitter and iTunes, of course. And if you're not watching on one and you want to watch on the other, there's links somewhere for you to find. You can go and search for them wherever they may be. For more kind of footballing discussion, daily podcasts, as we've already talked about, throughout the World Cup. So there's that. Ben, any final thoughts? Have you got some kind of witty saying that you're going to come out and say now?
Never. I will suggest, though, if you are watching on YouTube, put your predictions. Do it for all the groups we've done. Put your predictions. Who do you think will be getting out of the group? And did you enjoy the Australian accent?
No. And if you're on iTunes, you can tweet them at us at ForTheFans Show. Right, Ben.
Yes.
Do you want to say bye?
Goodbye.
Thanks for watching, guys. We're out.